Carpenters are known for their beautiful songs and meaningful lyrics, and they had a significant influence on music history. When Paul McCartney, a famous member of the Beatles, shared his views about this sibling duo, it caught a lot of attention. Some wondered if he admired them, was surprised, or had a different opinion altogether. McCartney's comments could change how you view the Carpenters. To fully grasp what he thinks, let's look back at how their incredible journey started. The Carpenters were a brother and sister duo. Siblings Karen and Richard Carpenter were known for their special music. Karen had an amazing voice, and Richard was very talented at playing instruments and writing songs. Over their 14 years together, they made 10 albums and created many popular songs. Like many famous people, the Carpenters had close connections to California, and their old house in Downey became a topic of debate between its new owners and their loyal fans. However, the Carpenters actually grew up in New Haven, Connecticut, where they were both born. In the 19,940s, Richard grew up in a regular middle-class family. Despite becoming famous worldwide, his hometown didn't celebrate his success much. Richard's music career started in New Haven, long before anyone knew him. In high school, he started a band with friends and played at local events. In 1963, he recorded an album with a group called the Berries. That same year, the Carpenter family moved to California, where Richard was set on a path for a music career. He began playing the accordion at age 4 and the piano at 8. His music teacher thought he was very talented for his age. On the other hand, Karen didn't love music like her brother did. She played the accordion, but wasn't really interested in it. Instead, she enjoyed playing baseball and would protect her brother from other kids who bullied him. Karen was a big baseball fan and knew all the statistics. She liked playing army with her friends in the park and even had a toy gun. Music wasn't her main interest. By the time she was 19, she had an amazing deep singing voice. The Carpenters moved to Downey, California, partly because their dad, Harold, didn't like the cold New England winters, and their mom, Agnes, thought California would be great for Richard's music career. The move was tough for Karen, who was just 13 then. She felt left out and believed they moved just for Richard, which made her feel unimportant. Even though she felt out of place, Karen eventually found her own way. In California, while Richard focused on his career, Karen amazed everyone by uncovering her talent. She started playing drums in high school, which was unusual because drums were seen as a boy's instrument. Karen was determined and won her band director's support, quickly proving she had a natural talent. When she and Richard began making music together, Karen drummed while singing, showing off her amazing skills. Even though the family moved for Richard's job, Karen became a star in her own right. At just 16 years old, they became the first in their family to get a record deal. Before they were famous, Karen and Richard Carpenter, along with some friends, started a band named Spectrum. They were good enough to perform at Disneyland, which was a big opportunity back then. However, there was a limitation. Disneyland only wanted them to play old jazz music. This was during the 1960s, when psychedelic rock was becoming popular. But Disneyland wasn't ready to change. Richard and his bandmate John Bettis faced this challenge. They were young and full of energy. One night at a club, the audience asked for popular rock songs. Even though their boss, Victor Gutter, had told them not to, they decided to play Light My Fire by the Doors anyway. The song's bold lyrics didn't match the conservative vibe of the place, and Gutter fired them for going against his wishes. They were upset about losing their job, but instead of moving on, they used their frustration to write a song about Gutter called Mr. Gutter. Looking back, Richard made a slight dig at their old boss and admitted they had made mistakes. He later recognized how lucky they were to have worked at Disneyland and accepted that breaking the rules was a mistake driven by youthful rebellion. After their time at Disneyland, Richard and Karen joined another musician, Wes Jacobs, to form the Richard Carpenter Trio, which they later renamed the Carpenters. Wes was still with them when they made their first big TV appearance. The All-American College Show performed a cover of Dancing in the Street, which started their rise to fame. In the 1970s, the Carpenters signed with A&M Records, but their first album wasn't very successful. Everything changed when they released Close to You, which became a huge hit. Karen's beautiful voice got much more attention than Richard's piano playing. As Karen became more famous, she started hanging out with other celebrities, including a well-known British friend. Singer and actress Petula Clark once attended a live Elvis Presley concert in Las Vegas with her friend Karen. After the show, Elvis invited them to his dressing room. Known for his charm, Elvis flirted with both women. While Karen, who was young and inexperienced, didn't notice, Petula did. She quickly took Karen out of the room, leaving Elvis amused. Karen's account of meeting Elvis was vague, as she couldn't remember exactly when it happened, just that it occurred during the performance. During an interview, she said he was at his best, but later she claimed to have met him several times, making people question what to believe. The Carpenters were known for their clean and wholesome image, seen as the ideal American duo with no drinking or smoking. However, behind the scenes, they were just regular people. In another interview, they expressed their dislike for being seen only as a squeaky clean act. They felt trapped between the carefree 60s and conservative expectations. Richard and America admitted they were okay with things like premarital sex and marijuana. Despite this, they still maintained a pure image that their fans expected. Even President Richard Nixon looked up to them, seeing the Carpenters as symbols of traditional American values during a time of change. They provided comfort and stability for many people. Nixon liked them so much that he invited them to perform at a formal dinner for the German leader. After their show, he referred to them as Young America. Richard didn't believe the perfect image people had of them. He wanted everyone to see the truth. They weren't just a clean example of American values. While they looked better than the wild rock bands, they were just regular people with their own thoughts, struggles, and beliefs. Behind Karen's cheerful demeanor, there was a more difficult side. Although she seemed happy, she faced serious insecurities, especially about her weight, which had gotten worse since her teenage years. Self-conscious and started dieting to lose weight. This eventually led to her developing anorexia, a battle that would define much of her life according to the documentary Little Girl Blue. Karen began dieting at a young age. After high school, she followed a strict plan that helped her drop from 145 lbs to 120 lbs. At that point, it didn't seem alarming. She was still eating and maintaining her weight, but over time, her worries about her appearance grew. She kept losing weight until she dropped to just 110 lb friends. She told her that she looked great, but her family began to see that something was wrong. Karen tried to hide how little she was eating, often giving her food away instead of eating it herself. Her friends were worried, but didn't know how to help. At that time, doctors and therapists didn't understand eating disorders well, so it took years for Karen to get the support she needed. Her friends tried to help by telling her to eat more, not realizing that anorexia is a complicated mental health problem. Even though Karen had personal challenges, she kept doing well and even met Paul McCartney, a musician she and Richard really admired. While Paul McCartney and the Carpenters both created soft rock music, they were very talented musicians capable of playing different styles. The Carpenters loved the Beatles and even performed some of their songs like Ticket to Ride and Help. Although their versions of the originals didn't change everything, they showed their admiration for the Beatles and helped fans connect with each other. Richard Carpenter mentioned that he reinterpreted the Beatles song Yesterday into a gentle ballad, which received positive feedback for its new approach. On their website, he noted that he and Karen signed a deal with A&M Records in 1969.5. Many acts, movies, and TV shows are directed now by Peter Quiller. Their first album combined popular sounds of the time with their unique style and influences from groups like the Mamas. The album by the Papas and the Beach Boys includes their version of Ticket to Ride, which Richard thinks is one of the Beatles' best songs. He believed that many lively songs could be changed into beautiful ballads with careful thought. Together, Richard and Karen made Ticket to Ride slower and more emotional by changing the tempo, rearranging the chords, and softening the melody. Karen's voice tied everything together, especially when she sang certain words like care, which added a deep emotional touch. Richard noticed the sadness in the lyrics and brought it to life with his music arrangement. He also mentioned that their version of Ticket to Ride hinted at their future hit Close to You. The ending of Ticket to Ride had a rich four-part harmony, creating a sound with 12 voices on the line, "Think I'm Going to Be Sad." This was like a preview of the famous W sound that would later be memorable in Close to You. Richard's connection of Ticket to Ride was a massive success, dominating the charts in the US and holding its spot for an impressive 11 weeks. The album it came from, Help, was an even bigger hit, reigning at the top of the album charts for an incredible 46 weeks when the Carpenters released their version of Ticket to Ride. It did fairly well, reaching number 54 on the charts. It wasn't a major hit, but it stayed on the charts for a while. Interestingly, the song's modest success led to a big decision. They renamed their debut album. The album Ticket to Ride reached number 150 on the Billboard 200, which is a good achievement for a new group like the Carpenters. They added their own softer, more melodic style to the song, but most listeners still liked the Beatles' original version better. Competing with the Beatles was tough. However, the Carpenters and Paul McCartney met in the 1970s, but their meeting was not about Ticket to Ride. In 1974, they called McCartney for a different reason, not to talk about his time with the Beatles. Fans loved his new song Jet, and it was a surprise call that showed how music connects people. Their next meeting was in Manchester when Paul McCartney invited the Carpenters to meet him while he was working on his brother Michael's album. Karen and Richard were big fans of Paul, and he admired them too, calling Karen the best female voice in the world for her melodic and unique sound. When Karen and Richard got to the studio, Paul was singing Top of the World, one of their popular songs. They complimented each other, signed some albums, and enjoyed watching Paul perform. Ray Coleman noted that if it hadn't been a rock album, Karen might have been part of it. In the 1970s, some women, including Karen Carpenter, used a drug called Ipac to lose weight. However, Ipac has a chemical called emotine that can seriously harm the heart if used too much. Karen also had very high blood sugar levels, about 10 times higher than normal. Karen Carpenter's death highlighted the dangers of anorexia and the extreme things people do to manage their weight. After she died, famous people like Princess Diana talked about these issues. They faced their own issues with eating disorders, which prompted attempts to ban Epoch because of its risks. However, it wasn't completely taken off the market. Richard Carpenter works hard to remember the past and puts family first. He is married to his cousin Mary Rudolph, and they have 5 children together. Richard sometimes has his kids perform with him.